Presence should be purposeful. That means your time, your energy, and your attention shouldn't be spent without thought or direction. We live in a culture that celebrates being everywhere, doing everything, and responding to everyone. We scroll, we text back, we show up at events we don't care about, and we stretch ourselves thin in the name of being supportive, loyal, or just present. But the truth is, not all presence has power. There's a difference between simply being there and being intentional about why you're there. Purposeful presence means evaluating where you invest yourself. It means asking, why am I showing up here? Who am I helping? Is this part of my purpose or just part of my habit? When you live with intentionality, you begin to realize that being in every room isn't the win. The win is being in the right room where your voice, your heart, and your value make a difference. When you show up without purpose, you dilute your energy and end up resenting the time you gave away so freely. But when you show up with purpose, you multiply your impact. Many people feel drained, unseen, or unappreciated because they're giving the best of themselves to people or places that don't recognize their value. That's what happens when presence isn't guided by purpose. It becomes survival, not service. You become so used to being the one who is always there that your presence starts to feel expected rather than appreciated. And once something is expected, it stops being honored. Intentional presence also challenges the idea that you have to prove your worth by being busy or constantly involved. There's this false sense of productivity that comes from being seen everywhere. But productivity without direction is just movement, not progress. Purposeful presence is about being okay with missing out if it means maintaining your peace. It's about saying no, not out of pride, but out of clarity. Because when you know your purpose, you stop showing up just to be seen and start showing up to serve something meaningful. Letting your presence be purposeful is also about boundaries. It's understanding that your time is not owed, it's a gift. And every time you walk into a space, you bring more than just your body. You bring your spirit, your thoughts, your energy. That's a powerful offering. So when you offer it freely to people who misuse it or environments that drain it, you're not just wasting time, you're depleting your spirit. You begin to lose the very spark that made your presence meaningful in the first place. Being intentional with your presence doesn't mean becoming isolated or unavailable. It means becoming strategic. It means understanding that sometimes the most impactful thing you can do is pause, pull back and ask, is this still aligned with who I'm becoming? Because you're not meant to be who you were forever. As you grow, so should your boundaries, so should your clarity, so should your standards for what gets your attention. When your presence is purposeful, it becomes more powerful. People feel it when you're truly there, not distracted, not performing, not proving anything, just there with purpose. And they'll remember that. They'll remember the moments you brought clarity, calm, or strength into the room simply because you were intentional about being there. That's the kind of presence that leaves a mark. So the challenge is to stop scattering yourself and start stewarding yourself. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not every situation requires your voice. Some places are better left unattended. Some people will only realize what you brought after you've stepped back. And that's okay, because when your presence is guided by purpose, you'll no longer fear being missed. You'll expect it, not because you're arrogant, but because you've learned the value of showing up only when it matters. And that's the kind of presence people remember, not the person who was everywhere, but the one who showed up with purpose and made it count. Sometimes your absence can speak louder than your words. In a world that pushes constant interaction and immediate response, it may seem counterintuitive that stepping back can actually make a bigger statement than speaking up. But it's true, there is power in restraint, and there's wisdom in knowing when to be silent or distant. People often assume that in order to make an impact, they need to always be visible, always be vocal, always be involved. But presence is not always proof of power. In fact, the absence of your presence can create space for others to realize just how much you brought into a room, a relationship, or a situation. When you are always around, always accessible, people may begin to see you as a constant. And the more constant something is, the more likely it is to be taken for granted. Like the air we breathe, we don't notice its value until it's gone. That's human nature. So sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back, not to punish anyone, but to allow the silence to speak for you. Let the space you leave behind tell the story. Let the quiet remind others of the peace you carried, the insight you offered, or the consistency you brought. Because the truth is, when your presence is deeply valuable, your absence becomes deeply felt. There's a lesson in knowing when to pull back, not in bitterness, but in self-awareness. There are times when continuing to show up, continuing to explain, continuing to engage does nothing but drain you. You don't need to convince people of your worth. You don't need to beg for appreciation. You don't need to exhaust yourself trying to prove what should already be evident. When you've given what you can give and your presence is no longer being received with gratitude or respect, your silence can be your boundary. Your distance can be your protection, and your absence can be your answer. Absence has a way of revealing truth. It exposes the depth of relationships. It tests the strength of connections. People begin to realize whether they truly valued you or simply enjoyed the convenience of having you around. The conversations you stopped initiating, the support you stopped giving, the energy you stopped offering, it all begins to echo. And in that echo, people begin to hear what they didn't notice before. It's not about playing games or seeking attention. It's about honoring your capacity and refusing to overextend yourself for those who don't recognize what you carry. Letting your absence speak doesn't mean disappearing out of anger or sulking in silence. It means making room for clarity. Sometimes you need to remove yourself to gain perspective. Distance creates space, not just for others to reflect, but for you to remember your value. When you're too close to something, it's easy to lose yourself in it. Stepping away helps you see what's real, what's one-sided, and what's worth your continued investment. You learn who reaches out, who notices, who follows up, and who doesn't. There's also a sacred stillness that comes with choosing absence. You reclaim your time, your peace, your focus, and in that quiet, you reconnect with your own voice, the one that often gets drowned out by the noise of everyone else's expectations. You start to realize that you don't have to be everywhere to be effective. You don't have to say something every time to be understood. Sometimes the message is in what you don't say. Sometimes walking away says more than any final word ever could. We all want to be heard, but we must learn that being missed is sometimes more powerful than being noticed. When someone feels your absence, it means your presence had weight. It means you brought something that wasn't ordinary. And when they start to feel the void, it becomes clear you weren't just filling space, you were shaping it. Your silence has a voice. Your distance has meaning. When you stop showing up in spaces that no longer honor you, you're not being weak, you're being wise. You're letting your absence create the awareness that your presence could not. Not because you failed to speak, but because others failed to listen. And now, in your stillness, in your stepping back, the message becomes louder than ever. When you're always accessible, people begin to take your presence for granted. It's a hard truth, but one that plays out constantly in both personal and professional relationships. The more available you are, the less people feel the need to value your time or consider the effort it takes for you to show up. It's not that they are unkind or ungrateful. It's just that human nature tends to devalue what feels guaranteed. Accessibility without boundaries often leads to familiarity that breeds complacency. When people know they can reach you at any moment, they may stop seeing your presence as something special and start seeing it as something expected. Being constantly available might start with good intentions. You want to be helpful, supportive, dependable. You want to be there when people need you. But over time, this openness can come at a cost. You begin to notice that your efforts are no longer being acknowledged the way they once were. Your advice becomes background noise. Your kindness becomes routine. Your availability becomes assumed, and instead of being appreciated, it starts to be overlooked. The very things that once made you valuable in someone's eyes become invisible when they're given without boundaries. This is why it's important to understand that being constantly present doesn't necessarily deepen your relationships. It can actually weaken them. The relationships that last and remain strong are those built on mutual respect and clear boundaries. When you are always available, you may unintentionally teach people that your time doesn't require consideration. You may find yourself overcommitted, emotionally exhausted, and feeling unseen, not because you lack value, but because your constant accessibility made it too easy for others to forget your worth. There is wisdom in knowing when to say no, when to delay a response, when to create a little space. It's not about being distant or cold. It's about creating room for appreciation. But when people are given the chance to miss your presence, to notice the gap you leave when you're not there, they begin to recognize how much you truly contribute. The small things you do, listening, encouraging, helping, supporting, become more visible in your absence than they ever were in your over-availability. You can show love without being available 24/7. You can be reliable without being constantly on call. You can care deeply without giving yourself away completely. True connection doesn't demand constant presence. It values quality over quantity. It's not about how often you show up, but how meaningful it is when you do. When you start putting boundaries around your time and energy, people may not like it at first, Some might feel rejected or confused, but in time, those who truly value you will adjust. They'll begin to approach you with more care. They'll think before they ask. They'll appreciate your yes because they'll know it means something. Constant availability also impacts how you see yourself. If you're always responding, always engaging, always accessible, you may start to lose track of your own needs. You get so wrapped up in being there for others that you forget how to be there for yourself. You stop checking in with your own peace, your own goals, your own growth. But when you start reclaiming your availability, when you choose to respond on your terms, to invest where there's mutual respect, you begin to build a stronger, healthier sense of self. You remember that your presence is a gift, not a given. There's also a professional cost to being too available. In the workplace, the employee who's always available may be seen as dependable at first, but over time, their contributions can be overlooked because they've become predictable. They're always the one to stay late, always the one to cover extra shifts, always the one to fix what others ignore. And then one day they realize no one says thank you anymore. That's not because they've become less valuable. It's because they've stopped drawing the line where value meets sacrifice. Being indispensable is not the same as being respected. You earn respect when people know you have limits and you protect them. When you stop being constantly available, you make room for appreciation to grow. You teach people to pause and consider what it takes for you to show up. You give yourself the space to breathe, to reset, to focus on what really matters. And in doing so, you transform your presence from something expected into something that's truly respected. You are not called to burn out. We live in a world that often glorifies exhaustion, where being constantly busy is mistaken for being important. People wear burnout like a badge of honor, as if being drained and overwhelmed proves that they're doing something right. But there is no virtue in self-neglect. There is no strength in pouring out everything you have until there's nothing left. You were not created to constantly run on empty. Your value is not measured by how much of yourself you can sacrifice. True strength is found in knowing your limits and honoring them even when the world pressures you to push past them. Even Jesus, in all His power and purpose, took time to withdraw. He stepped away from the crowds, away from the noise, away from the constant demands on His time and energy. If the Son of God needed to rest and recharge, what makes us think we don't? There's wisdom in pause. There's healing in quiet. You cannot keep giving if you are never receiving. You cannot keep showing up for everyone else if you're constantly abandoning yourself in the process. There comes a point where being too available, too helpful, too willing becomes destructive, not only to you, but also to the quality of what you offer. Burnout is not just physical exhaustion, it's emotional, mental, and even spiritual depletion. It sneaks in when you ignore the signs that you've gone too far for too long. It shows up when you silence your need for rest in order to meet someone else's expectations. It builds slowly, disguised as commitment, loyalty, or ambition. But eventually it catches up to you. Your creativity fades, your patience thins, your joy disappears, and what's left is a shell of someone who used to feel passionate and present. That's not how you're meant to live. You are called to serve, to lead, to build, to love, but not at the expense of your health and wholeness. Your calling includes rest. Your purpose includes preservation. You cannot be effective if you are constantly exhausted. You cannot carry your assignment with clarity if your mind and body are always weighed down. Sometimes the most spiritual, productive, and powerful thing you can do is stop, step away, breathe, say no, protect your peace as fiercely as you protect your passion. They go hand in hand. There is a quiet kind of courage in choosing to rest. It takes confidence to say, I need to pause, especially when people are expecting you to keep going. But you do not owe anyone your burnout. You do not have to prove your value by how much you can endure. You are not a machine. You are a living, breathing person with needs and limits. And ignoring those limits doesn't make you strong. It makes you vulnerable to breaking down completely. Rest is not a weakness. It is a strategy. It is a discipline. It is a declaration that says, I matter too. And let's be honest, the people who truly care about you will understand when you need space. They won't guilt you for resting. They won't demand more than you can give. They'll respect your boundaries because they respect you. But even if some don't, you still have to honor your own well-being. You can't keep showing up out of obligation if it's costing you your peace. You don't need to feel guilty for taking time to be still. Sometimes the most anointed work you'll do happens when you're not doing anything at all, when you're simply healing, reflecting, and being reminded of who you are outside of what you produce. Burnout robs you of joy, focus, and longevity. It makes you reactive instead of responsive. It replaces purpose with pressure, and if you don't catch it early, it can take months or even years to recover from. But it's preventable if you're willing to prioritize yourself the way you prioritize everyone else, if you're willing to be honest about what you can and can't handle, if you're willing to admit that being overwhelmed is not a sign of strength, but a warning signal from your soul. Your body will whisper before it screams. Listen to it, respect it. You are not called to live a life of constant depletion. You are called to overflow, but you can't overflow if you're always running on fumes. Learn to refill before you run dry. Learn to rest before you collapse. Because when you take care of yourself, you're not just doing it for you. You're doing it for everyone who depends on you to show up whole, not broken. You are not called to burn out. You are called to burn bright. And that begins with learning how to protect the flame. Don't just let people miss you. Live in such a way that they remember what you brought into their lives. It's easy to blend into the background, to go unnoticed because you're always around, always doing, always giving. But there is something powerful about making an intentional impact, about leaving behind more than just a memory of your presence, leaving behind evidence of your character, your kindness, your wisdom, and your values. Life is not about being popular or well-liked for a moment. It's about creating a legacy of influence, one interaction at a time. When people think of you, what do they recall? Do they think of someone who showed up with purpose, who lifted the atmosphere when you walked into a room, who made others feel seen and heard? Or do they remember someone who was just always there, but never quite present? The difference lies in intentional living. It's not about trying to impress everyone. It's about making a deep, authentic mark wherever you go. It's about knowing what you carry and using it with wisdom. You don't have to do something loud to be remembered. You just have to do something meaningful. Making your impact memorable starts with how you treat people, not just the ones who can offer you something in return, but the ones who can't. The way you listen when someone is hurting, the way you speak life into someone who's struggling, the way you honor people's time, dignity, and space, all of that leaves a lasting impression. People remember how you made them feel more than what you said. They remember whether you added peace or brought chaos. They remember whether your presence brought clarity or confusion. And when you consistently live from a place of integrity, compassion, and self-awareness, your absence will carry just as much weight as your presence once did. Your character is what outlives your presence. The things you do when no one is watching, the decisions you make that align with your values, the standards you uphold when it's inconvenient, those are the things that speak for you long after you've left the room. Living memorably is not about performance. It's about authenticity. It's about showing up consistently in the fullness of who you are, not trying to be everything to everyone, but being true to your core in every space you occupy. It's also about intentional investment. Wherever you go, ask yourself, am I planting something that will grow even when I'm gone? Whether it's through mentoring someone, starting a project, building healthy relationships, or creating moments of joy and encouragement, what you build should have the power to outlast you. Even in small moments, you can plant seeds that continue to bear fruit long after you're no longer involved. People may forget the details of what you did, but they won't forget the effect it had on them. That's the essence of a memorable impact. This kind of living also means you stop trying to be everywhere at once and instead focus on being fully present where it matters most. Depth is more powerful than width. Instead of spreading yourself thin, pour yourself into a few places where you can truly make a difference. Whether it's your family, your workplace, your community, or your creative work, show up with intentionality. Do it with excellence. And do it in a way that reflects the best of who you are. Living in a way that people remember doesn't require perfection. It requires presence, integrity, and consistency. It means acknowledging your flaws while still striving to grow. It means apologizing when you fall short and learning from your mistakes. People don't remember you for being flawless. They remember you for being real, for being dependable, for being someone who stood for something when it would have been easier to go with the flow. Eventually, time and distance will remove you from certain spaces and relationships, but the imprint you leave behind can remain. Your name may not always be spoken, but the impact of your presence, how you led, how you loved, how you served, can ripple far beyond your lifetime. That's the kind of legacy worth living for, not just to be missed, but to be remembered. Not just to be around, but to be impactful. Because at the end of the day, it's not how many places you went or how many people you impressed. It's how many hearts you touched, how many lives you lifted, and how many moments you made meaningful. Letting them miss you doesn't mean disappearing without cause. It means trusting that distance can clarify what words sometimes cannot. There are moments in life when stepping away is not only necessary for your own peace, but it also serves as a mirror for others. When you're constantly present, always available, always giving, it becomes easy for people to overlook the value you bring. Familiarity can lead to blindness. People stop seeing you clearly when you're always in front of them, but
But distance has a way of making people see what they didn't notice when you were right there beside them. The space you create by stepping back is not empty. It's filled with your absence. That absence can speak volumes. It echoes with every good thing you brought into someone's life. Your encouragement, your reliability, your joy, your guidance. When you stop showing up, people begin to feel the void. They begin to notice how much weight you carried quietly, how much light you brought without demanding attention. They remember the calm you offered in chaos, the way you listened when no one else did, the way you made difficult things seem manageable. Absence has the power to highlight your value in ways presence never could. Sometimes we're afraid to step back because we think we'll be forgotten. We fear that if we're not constantly giving, constantly doing, people will move on without us. But real connections don't dissolve in distance. In fact, healthy distance can reveal who truly values you. If your absence leads to silence, then that silence speaks a truth you need to hear. It shows you who was there out of convenience and who was there out of care. It's painful, yes, but it's also clarifying, because you were never meant to chase love, affirmation, or respect. You are meant to be chosen even when you're not right in front of someone. When you let them miss you, you are not manipulating. You are simply stepping into your worth and allowing others the space to recognize it for themselves. You're giving people the opportunity to recalibrate their view of you, to come to their own awareness of what you mean to them. And that kind of awareness can't be forced. It must be felt in the quiet, in your absence, in the moments when your presence is no longer a guarantee but a gift. Distance also gives you something vital, perspective. When you step back, you're not just letting others see you differently, you're giving yourself room to see them clearly too. Sometimes being too close to people clouds your judgment. You overlook patterns, you excuse disrespect, you stay loyal to dysfunction. But when you're no longer caught up in the moment-to-moment interactions, you can begin to ask deeper questions. Are these relationships feeding me or draining me? Am I showing up because I want to or because I feel obligated? Is there mutual investment or just one-sided effort? Letting them miss you can be the beginning of you no longer missing yourself. That space becomes sacred. It's where healing happens. It's where you remember who you are outside of your roles and responsibilities. It's where your soul takes a breath and your heart regains strength. And in that renewed space, you start to make clearer choices, not out of reaction, but from a place of centeredness. You decide what you'll walk back into, what you'll let go of, and what boundaries need to be set moving forward. You come back not desperate to be needed, but anchored in your value, whether people acknowledge it or not. Letting them miss you also cultivates maturity in your relationships. It challenges people to do their part. If they've grown used to you always being the one to reach out, always being the one to fix things, to follow up, to carry the emotional load, your absence gives them a chance to grow, to initiate, to reflect, to realize that connection is a two-way street, and those who rise to that challenge are the ones worth keeping. Those who don't may have only been passengers in your life, not true partners in your journey. So yes, let them miss you, not out of pride, but out of peace. Not to create confusion, but to bring clarity. Because sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to stop moving and simply let your absence do the talking. In that silence, in that space, in that pause, people will either step forward or step away. And either way, you'll know more than you did before. You'll walk forward with truth, with strength, and with the assurance that the right people will not only notice your absence, they'll make sure they never have to feel it again.